Common to most British tanks of the era, the drive is at the back. The interesting thing about the sprocket here is that the teeth themselves are hooked a little bit forward, unlike the normal symmetrical aspect of most sprocket wheels that you'll find. They will merge with the single pin tracks. The tracks themselves are held in place by washers. A point to note is that the tracks had a service life of 1,000 miles, but the sprockets themselves only had a service life of 800 miles. But the manual stated that it was good practice to replace both the track and the sprocket at the same time. So you had a lot of semi-used tracks flying around, I presume. Of course, there's more to tension in the track than simply having the return rollers. The crew are expected to do a little work as well. To tension track on Comet, the first thing you'll do is you'll loosen the locking nut here, and then you will screw out this piston, which presses a pawl into the ratcheting system here on the idler wheel. Once this is loose, you can then proceed to lever the idler wheel into place, loosen or more tense as required. Move around to the front of the tank. You unbolt the mud guards to get those out of the way. Then you get the track adjusting lever, which is a great big long metal rod basically, a bit like a tanker bar. We don't have the right one to hand. And according to the manual, what you do is with the full force of 3 men, use the lever to lift up the track adjusting idler to the appropriate amount of tension. You then go around, you screw in the pawl back into the ratchet to hold it into position, lock up your locking nut, and you're done. Things have gotten a lot simpler since. The rear of the tank is very sparse indeed. There aren't even any tail lights. There is a marker light located on the top right. There's a box here for a telephone, and you'll note that the towing pintle is mounted on leaf springs. Outside of that, with the engine deck closed, the only item of note is the gun crutch, which is located at the very forward end of the engine deck. So after great expenditure of effort traversing the turret, we can now open up the various hatches. Now the automotive components of Comet were pretty much just taken straight from Cromwell. You have your Rolls-Royce Meteor V12 engine, 2 banks of magnetos, 2 carburetors, a dry sump lubrication system, the oil tank located right under there, oil filler component is here, and the dipstick is over on the other side. The air filters can take their air either from louvers on the side, or the crew have a flap that they can open or close to draw air through the crew compartment into the air filter. The advantage to this is that you had even more filtered air, the crew and the compartment itself acting as a filter. The disadvantage is that you are now sucking the outside air through the compartment. If it was a cold day, you just made yourself even colder. Directly underneath me here are 2 large fans, and their job is to suck air through the louvers and out through the entire engine compartment, notably over these cooling rods here. This will cool the engine oil. The actual engine coolant itself is, the reservoir is right here. Moving to the back, now we can see the famous Merritt brown gearboxes. They initially showed up in the Churchills and were deemed sufficiently good that they kept showing up everywhere else for a while afterwards. The steering was done again. You had steering brakes right in the middle, and on the outer side you had the main drive brakes to stop you down from general forward motion. The tank could neutral steer, as one of the great advantages of the Merritt brown gearbox. Earlier versions of the Meteor were ungoverned, so Cromwell could do almost 40 miles an hour. With Comet, they decided as a concession to reliability to put a governor on it. 2,550 RPM is all that this engine would do, and it will still pull the 32.5-ton Comet at a pretty respectable 29 miles an hour.